feel free to do that. You're welcome to do that today. And as the prompt just mentioned, Nader is recording this for anyone who can't attend. So just to be aware of that as well. So I think this is a great opportunity to focus really on what's unique about your experience as a transfer student, and how this might affect just your decision making or speed or where you are in your own personal career journey. And so that led us to do this idea of kind of a career roadmap, no matter where you are on that road. If you're on the starting point, if you're farther along on the road, that's great. And provide some resources and tools that you're aware of that you could take advantage of as a UCI student. So with that, to get it started, so some of the things I'm going to go over are really a timeline as a transfer student and some things to be thinking about. Again, no matter, depending on where you are in your career development path, and the idea of just developing that career plan for yourself, ways you can gain experience as a UCI student, specifically a bit more information about internship and job search, more information about networking and graduate school. Now, each of these could be standalone workshops. And so that's part of the idea of the survey at the end, to see where you'd like to go deeper. So I'm going to kind of try to scratch the surface of some of these and provide, again, an overview and some resources to get you started. But certainly if you have questions or wanted to go deeper, I could definitely chat more about any of these topics. So let's get started with the time frame of where some of you may be right now. And you know, I know this is a lot of text. Not all my slides will have this much text, but what I want to impress upon you, and I know, and I have an appreciation for, as a transfer student, you have a lot that you are trying to put in to your time at UCI, and it's much more limited and tighter. You're trying to not only learn the resources, but then apply them immediately. So it is fast. I also know from working with a lot of students that even the pace of going from the semester system that most of you were probably on previously to the quarter system, it's like a whole different pacing. And that kind of applies to your career development journey too. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of different things that can help support you along the way that you might want to take advantage of, or things you could be thinking about right now. And of course, this is COVID too, so there's that whole throws a whole nother wrench in things in terms of everything's remote. Everything's a little bit different for everyone anyway, so I'll try to point those pieces out where they differ this year as well. But for any of you, no matter where you are in your pathway or where you intend to go in the future, if you're in your your junior year and thinking ahead to your summer, I recommend for anyone to make an appointment with one of the career counselors at DCP, just to kind of go over what some of your thoughts are, where you are in your planning, and to help you have a guided individual experience. So just so you know, that's available to you to always meet with a career counselor. There's unlimited availability of appointments in terms of you can meet, as much as you want with someone. Also, no matter what direction you want to go in, I do think junior year and summer, you want to get involved. And that could look like a lot of different things depending on your interest area, where you want to develop skills or demonstrate your skills. For some people, that might be in research, it might be a job, it might be an internship, it might be a volunteer position, whatever that may be. But regardless of your pathway, you're going to learn a lot by getting experience. And that's complementing and supplementing your in-class education. And I'll talk more about resources to find those experiences. And now I want to talk a little bit more, though, depending on what pathway you think you're headed down in terms of looking for a job, internship, industry experience right after you graduate, or going to graduate school. So if you are thinking about kind of an industry career path immediately after graduation. Some great things to be doing now would be attending any kind of sessions, panels. These might be held at DCP, they might be through clubs and organizations, they might be through your school. To hear working professionals talk about their career, how they got into it, what's happening now with it. There's a lot of interesting talks right now about how COVID's affecting things, etc. You can always attend workshops too to learn about writing a resume, interviewing, developing a LinkedIn profile, all kinds of things. Attending career fairs. It's not too early to start doing that so that you become familiar and comfortable with the process. So by the time, if you're looking for an internship, certainly, and then by the time you're a senior looking for that full-time position. And also, researching job descriptions. It's never too early to start looking at what's out there. Do some searches, look at companies you're interested in, just see what's out there on Handshake for your field. Even if you're not applying yet, it's very helpful. If you're going down more that graduate school pathway, there might be some other things to think about in this year. You want to be looking at the requirements or prerequisites needed to go into the program, whether that's a master's or PhD program. You'll also want to be thinking about developing some relationships with faculty who might be able to serve as letters of who might be able to write letters of recommendation. You'll probably need at least one from a faculty member or other folks in your professional network that could write letters of recommendation for you. And I know it sounds early, but you almost have to apply almost a year in advance. So you'd be thinking about taking and preparing for if there is a requirement of an exam. And some of those have been waived due to COVID. So you would just need to check on the program and what's required. Skipping ahead to senior year. Again, I think everyone, it's a good touch point to meet with someone in career pathways to talk about your process, your plan, continue on gaining that experience, maybe fine tuning for the industry career pathway, applying and actually interviewing for those opportunities. And for graduate school, it might be if you are looking to go directly onto graduate school in your senior year, fall, you would start applying, researching the list of graduate schools and actually applying to them in your senior year. So you'd be applying probably in the fall and winter to go that following fall. So I know that was a lot of text, okay? So let's break this down just a little bit. And I really want you to think about when you are developing your own career plan. I think this is an Einstein quote about life is like riding a bicycle. In order to keep your balance, you must keep moving. And what I like about this, and since our theme is kind of the roadmap and so forth plan, I do think it's important. I see students that are most successful are involved, are active, they're moving towards something. You may not know what your goal is yet, and that's okay, but you might not even realize how just, again, getting involved or volunteering or joining a club can be very helpful in terms of moving you forward. There's another quote out there, or I've heard reference that also, if you want to turn, like let's say you're going down this pathway on your bicycle and you want to turn down a path to graduate school, you want to have the opportunity to apply to a certain company, you can't make a turn if you're still, you have to be in motion. So keep that in mind. And I think that's so important in terms of career planning, just to be active, being engaged in order to have those opportunities ready for you. Because if you're still and not doing anything, that's when it becomes harder to make those transitions. So when I talk about this, when I talk about being active, when I talk about this, I mean gaining experience. So that might be having a part-time job, even if it's not related to what exactly you want to do. Jobs can still be very valuable. Volunteering, maybe helping a senior who's working on their senior design project on their project, working in a lab on campus doing research. Projects, certainly in engineering, we see a lot of students developing the projects, and these can be personal projects or things you're doing academically for classes and so forth. But those are valuable experiences. Also doing something that we call informational interviews, and that's finding people, professionals out there working at positions that you're interested in. For example, you could go to LinkedIn, find alumni in your field, in your major, find people that are doing cool things and interesting things, and they're out there, and reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to have a quick, Zoom meeting with you, and share their career journey, how they got to where they are now. Informational interviews are wonderful for learning and connecting with people. And another thing that I always recommend, if it makes sense in your field, are looking into professional associations that might have student chapters, or other organizations, for example, on campus that you have some kind of connection to be interested in getting involved in. Do you have to do all these things? No, it's too much, right? So you need to be selective and think where you think depending on your needs, if you have a financial need to have a job, or if you, know you want to develop a skill, or you want to be able to demonstrate a skill to an employer down the road. These are things to be thinking about. Now, for a lot of you, I know we're associated at DCP, the Division of Career Pathways, with internships and jobs, and that's a big part of what we do. And to give you like a very high level look, I do recommend getting familiar with Handshake, because Handshake is the portal that we use at UCI to post any internship, job, project, anything, events, etc., will all be posted on Handshake. So it's good to get familiar with how to navigate, how to find what you're looking for. Handshake is also where you can sign up for appointments to meet with any of the staff. So you could make a career counseling appointment through Handshake, actually. You want to have your profile up to date, meaning make sure it's your correct, major or other pieces that you'd want to include. And some employers, if you make your profile public, some employers will do filtered searches and look for certain criteria and then send out information to candidates. You can also choose to upload documents such as your resume, and you can make that public if you wish as well. So good place to get familiar with if you have not already. Of course, and the other thing that I think a lot of people think of when they think of the Career Center, we certainly do these things, that's the place where I can learn how to write a resume or have a resume looked at. And the answer to that is yes. We definitely have a lot of resources on resume writing, cover letter writing, just applications in general. We look at LinkedIn profiles for folks that just want to look at theirs and review. I know that Nadar's going to go into more of the online portfolios, but it's something we really encourage, depending on your field, to document your work online. If you can have a link on your resume to a GitHub site or to a personal website that can show your work, that's awesome and unique. And it's a more common thing that we're seeing done. It still will set you apart because a lot of students aren't doing it. So it's a great thing still to do. There are a few resources I just want to point out. There's something called VMock on our website, where if you wanted to upload your resume and get an instant feedback, VMock is something that we subscribe to for UCI students, so it's free to you, but it's an AI system that reviews resumes. And a lot of students, especially I see a lot of our technical like STEM students using it and finding it helpful just for quick pieces of advice. And of course, you can take or leave, what you want from there. But regardless, have a second set of eyes, real eyes too, ideally, on your application pieces. Have someone look at your resume, look at a cover letter. You can use a career counseling appointment to do that. We're doing these on Zoom, so people will either like drop it in the chat or share their screen, and we're looking at documents all the time. So we are happy to do that. I also just want to touch on a couple of other things. So I mentioned LinkedIn a little bit. I mentioned informational interviews. The reason why we emphasize some of these pieces is that if you look at any survey data about how people find their positions and how people get jobs, essentially, so much of it comes down to networking. And you'll read different statistics. Any survey we've ever done of recent grads always has networking as number one. So it does matter. And we try to help teach students skills of how to network and how to think about like networks you already have. Again, you've already you're part of the UCI community. That's a network. Perhaps you're part of other professional associations that are networks. It's good to think about joining LinkedIn groups that would be professional in nature that you might be able to network with. um, so these are just good things to be thinking about. Um, and sometimes when you'll learn about positions, or you'll even learn about like a company that you haven't heard about sometimes when you talk to people that are in the field. I know this can be harder to do in a remote world because we don't have events to do this kind of thing organically. However, doing things like informational interviews, I think actually have been easier for some students to do during COVID because everyone's pretty comfortable on Zoom. And so asking someone in Seattle, in Denver, in Chicago to conduct an informational interview with you is doable. So, so that's something that's kind of nice. Even someone local, like in LA, you don't necessarily have to drive up there right now, so it can be a lot more convenient for them and for you to do informational interviews and some networking this way. So you might think about taking advantage of that. We do have some formal events set up essentially for networking, and those are things like career fairs. We'll have some workshops that employers conduct as well, and we try to note that on the workshop when an employer is conducting the session, so you'll see that. I know in the spring we have at least maybe 2 or 3 workshops set up that are going to be employer led. And so going to these virtual events, I know upcoming in the spring, we're going to have a general career fair that everyone's welcome um, to attend. Our fairs right now obviously are virtual and they're managed through Handshake. So how it works is you find the career fair on Handshake. You can see who's participating in the fair, and you actually go in and sign up for a time, a 10-minute time to talk with an employer one-on-one. And some of them also have information sessions where you could like learn about their company and go in with a group of students. And I think that cap is something like 50 students unless they have an external like link to another Zoom. um, but those can be good for networking as well. And if any of you have been to career fairs at UCI in the past, for you seniors, they can get so busy, long lines, it's crowded. The nice thing about it now is that you like sign up for your time slot. So you don't have a line, you can go in there at 10:20 to talk to that employer at that time. So that's kind of one advantage to be looking at. All of our events and workshops and fairs that I'm mentioning, they'd be on our website and also on Handshake. So either place you could take a look to find out kind of what's going on or what's coming up. And I know some of you are thinking about grad school, and we definitely do grad school advising at DCP. And sometimes, we'll reflect on things like You know, is graduate school right for you right now? Or is it better to maybe take some time and work for a little while, maybe have a gap year or years, it can be a misnomer to not have that plural, before going to grad school. We could have those conversations. Um, Researching programs that are out there, you know, if you're looking for something that is still more industry based, something more research based, a PhD program versus a master's can really vary. Schools do have information sessions and ways you can learn about different grad programs specifically. We help with that process. I will put in a plug for the Writing Center. The Writing Center does a great job reviewing like personal statements and the essays for graduate school. So I'd recommend making an appointment there if you'd like to have one of your essays and personal statements reviewed for grad school. And every year we have a graduate school fair in the fall, and in the spring we have a health professions fair. So if any of you are considering medical school or other kinds of health professions, that's coming up quite soon. So overall, I'm trying to give you like a big picture lens without diving in too deep to any of these topics, but just to be aware, you know, I know it's a lot that you're taking on, and especially taking on in this very strange year. So, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself through the process, that you have some kind of support system, whether that's family, friends, classmates, or a department on campus that you've really connected with, so that you you know, you can make this you know, positive experience, but also experience where you are you know, progressing and growing and going where you need to go. Um, you know, you really want to identify your skills during this time. This is a time where you get to try different things. And then what we try to help students do is communicate those skills to employers, whether that's through a resume, through an interview, through a cover letter. A lot of this is about finding a fit. But I want to emphasize here is that probably your first job is not going to be your forever job. So it's okay if it's not perfect. It may not be like the company you've always dreamed about right away. Um, it's a little different than you know, for some people, like, you know, they've always known what they wanted to do next. You know, they always knew they wanted to go to college at a UC or something like that. This is a little bit of a different time where there's not one pathway that the majority of people take or that you should take, right? So, so it's hard because you do need to you make decisions and think about what's best for you, and that's why we're here to try to support you in that process. But also know you might start down a pathway and you might make a change, and you can change jobs, you can change positions, you can go back to grad school. Those are all great options. And so don't feel too overwhelmingly stressed about that, you know, where you are right now. And you know, I mentioned the professional organizations, conferences, and just you know, setting aside some time for this kind of reflection and setting goals for yourself, so that the senior year doesn't creep up on you and then you're at your very end and wondering what should be next. And I just want to put my information on here. If you have any questions or wanted to reach out later on, you're welcome to do that. And I'm going to drop in the chat. So I know I had that timeline. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the share right here. I have a transfer student, we call it a career guide, that I think is pretty helpful, that I wanted to share out with you all. And oh, thank you for putting that in the chat as well. Okay, and here you go. Cool, thank you. And now I will I think I stayed within my time. Okay, good. We're going to have time for question answer to see where you want to explore more, but I will pass it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Keller. That was very great. Thank you so much. Also, as we mentioned earlier, this whole thing is also recorded. So if there was something that you weren't able to catch or anything like that, the video will be up very soon, hopefully. So you'll be able to review it and, write down more notes or anything you might need. All right. So let me head on over. Let me know if this is showing up on your screen in full screen, because I know there's always some weird thing going on with my presentation stuff. Anyway, so yeah, now that we've gone through the main presentation, I want to share a few additional tools and pieces of software that I've personally found really useful in preparing for my postgraduate career, because I do plan on doing postgraduate studies, and also kind of preparing myself and trying to look good for when I'm starting to look for a job and trying to get hired. So, oh, there we go. So yes, very pretty animation. I need to show that first. All right. Also, just real quick, I want to really emphasize that many of these tools are very nice because they're fast. I know that one big sort of important note that, or a really big important concern that we all have as transfer students is that we don't really have as much time as your usual high school, straight from high school transfer. So I specifically chose a few tools that I found were really easy and fast to use that would help speed up a lot of these processes, and just kind of help you rest easy and be prepared to tackle everything on time. So the first one, which I think is like super awesome and very useful that I wanted to share, is this website called Canva. So let me see if I can show you all a little bit of a demo. So it's basically like one of these little websites. It's like a template website. You can just click on and create a design. You can create a bunch of different kinds of things. And even though it might not be as apparent right now because it's just one big blank white screen, there are a lot of different templates you can choose from, including things like professional resumes. You can also choose something like a poster type of thing, flyers, whatever you need. So for any kind of thing that's like a document, or if you're trying to work on your resume, maybe you're trying to, for like a science fair or some kind of other fair, you're trying to make a poster or maybe some kind of presentational poster, then this would be a very excellent resource for that. Another really nice thing is that it's free. So all you need to do is just make a little account, have your email with them, and that's it. If you have a Google account, I think it's even easier. So, very easy to use. It also has one of those things where instead of just like a Word document where you just type things, it's a lot more akin to the way PowerPoint kind of works with it, where you can kind of like drag and drop images and text boxes, but it's a lot more, I want to say, new and faster in relative to that. The only word of advice I have around this, where I want you guys to be a little bit careful, is that as you may have seen with some of those resumes, they look very, very poppy and flashy and have like a lot of colors and images and stuff going on with them. If you're going to be using this to make your resume, I would recommend maybe not going too overboard with the colors and the imagery and stuff. Usually something like 2-3 colors tops would be more than enough. Something really simple and straightforward would work just fine. But yeah, just throwing that out there in case you're trying to get one of those done really quickly. For presentation slides, so like whether that be like PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever, a really good resource that I've discovered is called Slides Go. For many of you, I know for me at least, I always had this issue where it's like, my slides always really look bland, like they're just one color and that's it, like just a solid color and nothing else is going on. And I got sort of recommended, I'm like, hey, someone told me, hey, go to Slides Go, and I can show you that as well. This is also, I know it says pricing and stuff in the corner. It is also free to use. There are a few sort of templates and things on here that are premium based, so you do need to have a premium account. But for the most part, a lot of it is free, and you can really pick anything. There's a bunch of different sort of tabs and genres, I guess, if you will. So you can have like educationally themed ones, business themed ones, marketing themed ones, and so on. Actually, I've been using Slides Go for a lot of my presentations, including this one actually I used for it. So it has a lot of really nice professional looking templates if you know where to look. And you can also kind of do these little color change things. So it has all these very nice designs and these templates pre-made, but they're in different colors. So you can pick whatever fits your fancy. course, the one sort of catch to this again is that some of these sort of templates do require a premium account. You don't need a premium account to use this. There's a lot of like really awesome free templates. I use all the free ones. But so just keep an eye out for that in case some of them are like, oh, well, this is premium or whatever. Also, another thing you might need is that if you're going to do the Google Slides download, so you want to bring it directly into your Google Slides, you do need to have, of course, a Google account and you need to have like Google Drive and Google Slides set up and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's usually very quick, especially for Google Slides or for PowerPoint. You just basically click add to slides or download or whatever, and it'll just give you the template as it is. So you can just immediately get to work on it. Very nice for speed as well. Now, this one is a little more like hyper-focused onto those of you who are programmers or people that work with a lot of code at least. If you have not heard of them, use Git and GitHub. You'd be surprised how a lot of people don't seem to really know about this. And it shocks me, or at least know about it, but don't really know how to use it or don't use it often. These are very, very great tools if you are doing anything with code, or if you have like a code-related project, maybe like an app or any kind of software you want to show off. This is a great, great, great tool to use for a bunch of reasons. For starters, it's great for backups. That way, if God forbid anything happens to, your computer or whatever it is that you're running your software on, you'll still have GitHub around and you will be able to just re-download your code. Of course, you have to update it, push it on there, make sure it's up to date, but it is a very excellent backup. You can also use it as a sort of online repository. I mean, that's what it is, where you can really show off all your code. You can, of course, put different repositories as public or private or whatever, but if you have anything that you really want to show off, just put it on public, and then anyone with a link to your repositories can actually just check out what kind of code you've been working on or whatever program you've been working on. I know for myself personally, in my resume, I actually have my GitHub link like square right in the front, just so I could show off some of my code and some of my work. Of course, this is another free piece of software, but the catch is that a single repository, so a single sort of place where you upload your code, or like a single project, quote unquote, you have a limit of about 500 megabytes or so. So be wary of that. After that, you do have to pay. They have like different pricing options. You can check that out if you need to go over. But for the most part, at least from what I've seen, most people tend to be around the 500 megs and lower. So, if you're in that range, then you basically have unlimited access to this really awesome tool. Another really neat thing is that it's incredibly compatible, and a lot of different compilers and different pieces of software have been sort of redone so that they can integrate GitHub into them. I know especially if any of y'all are working with Python or PyCharm or any of that stuff, any JetBrains software or compilers, then that has a lot of GitHub integration. So you can have loading and saving of your code really, really easy and quick. And of course, that's very nice. So moving on, for a more general way to kind of show off your work, an e-portfolio, one thing that I really highly recommend is Google Sites. I've used one in the past before I figured out, Canva and GitHub and all that really well. The way I did it was I just put everything on Google Drive, and then I was like, share it whenever I share it. But then, of course, that's not really, efficient or practical. So another way I kind of approached it was through Google Sites. Of course, this is a Google product. I didn't make any sites with my UCI account, so you're not really seeing anything here. But if you've made a site, it's basically just like Google Docs or Google Sheets or Google Forms. It'll actually show up as a part of your Google Drive, and it's pretty easy to make one. They even have, look, right here, they have 2 portfolio templates right off the bat. So way easy and really fast. Right there, right in front of you. Of course, again, the sort of catch is that you, of course, need a Google account if you don't have one for whatever reason. You will need a Google account to access it and to be able to do all this stuff. But if you do, it will be very, very nice. Also, because it has some other integrations alongside the other different, let me see if I can find it. It also, as you can see here, has integrations with things like Google Docs, Slides, Sheets, Calendar, Map, YouTube. So if you have anything in there, like you have maybe like a certain spreadsheet you want to show, a presentation, maybe for whatever reason you want to put your calendar on there, what your schedule's like. Maybe you've recorded a demonstration of a really cool project you made on YouTube. This would be a really easy way to integrate all of these things. All of them are Google products, so it all works. I also want to recommend that if you are kind of doing what I used to do with putting everything on Google Drive and then linking that back and forth, one really nice tutorial I want to share is actually in this link right here. Basically, to summarize it, whenever you make a Google Drive link, so whenever you put something on Google Drive and you say, okay, I want to share this or I want to make it public, right? And you want to get a link to share, basically take the part after D / like this part, and then right before edit, and then add it to this. So basically take this, copy it, and then copy and paste that, and then take this and paste it at the end. And what that'll do is it'll create one of those auto download links that you've seen on some websites. So like, let me see if I can get y'all the transfer tab. So as you may see, some of these files right here, if you click on them, it doesn't really open anything. It just automatically downloads the file. They work on a very similar logic. So this is kind of like a DIY way of doing it if you have Google Drive. And it'll make a lot of your portfolios or e-portfolios or even your resume, if you have a link on there for your resume, it'll make it look really neat and professional, like a really pro move right there. Of course, I want to reiterate a few resources mentioned a little bit earlier. I really want to emphasize their importance. These being resources for finding internships and other kind of opportunities, LinkedIn and Handshake. So they're both kind of similar in the sense that you make a profile and you put on what you've done and the projects your experiences, the projects you've worked on, what you're looking to do, like where you're kind of looking for work and that kind of thing. Although my personal recommendation is I would kind of lean a little bit more towards Handshake, because that is kind of like, unlike LinkedIn, which is just very general and broad, and it's kind of like anyone uses this for any job, any occupation, any field. It's kind of really broad with that. Handshake is very, very focused for students. So as Ms. Keller mentioned earlier, it'll help you get in touch with events, a lot of student help and advice, and different services that are focused and catered towards students. So this is very, very nice to keep your eyes on. Of course, if you don't have the link, you could just probably look it up on Google, just Handshake, UCI Handshake. But of course, the link is right here. It's just uci.joinhandshake.com. I can also share some of these links a little bit later in the chat. And of course, LinkedIn, always nice to have an account. My personal recommendation, my personal recommendation is for both of these sites, just make a profile, keep it as up to date as possible, and just kind of keep an eye and see maybe what comes in, what goes on, what sort of different announcements are made on both platforms. And as long as you're on top of that, then things should work out very well. And of course, I just want to kind of circle back and kind of put a little nice bow on this and say, if you want any additional resources, of course, I'll let you know if any really cool, neat software comes out there and I haven't catch wind of it, I'll let you all know. But I also really want to recommend that you guys go back and check the UCI Career Center website. So I'm going to click on it. I take a minute. I have very bad internet, I'm sorry. All right, there we go. So it's up. So it's a very straightforward website. You can, obviously, if you want to see events, career guides, you want to meet with someone, it's all like really very straightforward. You can find a lot of what you need right here. It also is divided not just into these neat little bubbles for different advice and tips, but there are also little tabs depending on what your level is. So of course, as an undergraduate, which most of us are, this is probably where you'd be wanting to look. If you're doing postgraduate stuff, so master's, PhD, what have you, great place to look here. If you want to look into your professional career and what kind of services are offered towards people in professional careers, you can also look here. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on all of these resources. And of course, I'll let you all know if I come up with anything new, in the next few quarters.